This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. We're talking about the Eagles being uninvited from the White House. I suppose with respect to the soon-to-be crowned Golden State Warriors NBA champion, President Trump maybe should just issue a preemptory disinvitation.
That if you win, you're not coming to the White House.
Because Steph Curry is not going to want to come. And,
no, he won't be there.
And Kevin Durant's not going to want to come.
Steve Kerr, their coach, isn't going to want to come.
Kevin Durant may probably be afraid that Laura Ingraham could be there. And she'll tell him to shut up and dribble again. For more on this topic and also NBA fashion, we're pleased to be joined by senior writer for NBA.com, our friend Steve Aschburner. Steve, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. Do we have Steve?
Steve.
Hello.
There we go. Hey, Steve. How you doing?
Yeah, hi. Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Good morning. So here's the thing. If the Cavs lose, once upon a time, they were burning LeBron James jerseys in effigy. Do you think that Cavs fans will burn his short suit in effigy?
For losing the finals? No, they'll wait until July until he changes teams again.
Yeah, right, exactly. So the prospects for a Cavs comeback, a little basketball, the prospect that Game 3 is tomorrow. They got hammered in Game 2 in Golden State. They are up against overwhelming firepower. Is this going to be like a 4-1?
Yeah, I when I wrote about this and previewed the final series, I mean that was my prediction that the Cavs would win one of these games in Cleveland here Wednesday or Friday and send everybody back to Golden State, to Oakland for the championship clincher. It just seems like you look at the teams and it's pretty obvious in relative strength that LeBron is the best player on the floor, and then if you were picking playground style, you might then be down to fifth or sixth when you take Kevin Love, who's his teammate in Cleveland, and then you might be down to 10th or beyond when you pick another Cavalier. So the imbalance in talent in these rosters is pretty dramatic, and as great as he can be, and I don't begrudge him that at all. I mean, this postseason to me is the first time that he has sort of lifted himself and clambered up into the discussion among the greatest of all time players.
Don't even say it better than Michael Jordan. Don't say it. Don't say it.
I won't. But that's that is just not enough. And the way that Golden State can attack in multiple ways, I think LeBron's going to run out of gas.
Oh, do you? Yeah, because without him, I mean, he's their whole offense. What, he scored 51 points the first game?
51, correct. And really, their whole offense is predicated on him being such a threat and being able to break down the opposing team defense that they start to cheat and collapse on him or double team him as they did in Game 2. So he finds, with the ball, he finds teammates on the perimeter who, hoist those 3-point shots. And those guys have to hit those shots. Otherwise, it all kind of falls apart. And they just have not gotten reliable shooting from the likes of Kyle Korver or J.R. Smith or George Hill, some of the guys that they employ almost specifically for their ability to hit the long ball.
Kyle Korver, he was on the Bulls for a time when we still had a franchise in Chicago until they folded.
No, they're starting over. And really, they're starting over.
Yeah, Fred Hoiberg is going to be the starting two-guard, I think, next year. So here's a question for you, though, Steve. Should we apply the D word to Golden State? Are we looking at Golden State having a John Wooden run here, and as long as Steph Curry and Kevin Durant are around?
Well, if they win a third championship in 4 years, if the only year they didn't win, they set the all-time regular season record for victories, 73. I think that you have to look at them with some of the teams that we consider to be somewhat dynastic, including the Bulls with six championships in 8 years, various Showtime Laker teams, the San Antonio team that had the long run with Tim Duncan. It's almost like they were like a jack-o'-lantern of championships. They would win, then they would take a year off, then they would win, and you had these spaces in there. And then of course the Russell Celtics are sort of beyond grasp, just because they were so dominant, and there really was not serious competition for much of their run.
With the Eagles controversy in the last 24 hours. Why is it that the NBA hasn't become as politicized as the NFL, hasn't suffered the same way the NFL has? I mean, you've had dust-ups. I mentioned, Kevin Durant and LeBron James being told by Laura Ingraham to just shut up and dribble. You've had Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr be kind of openly critical of President Trump. But it just doesn't. You haven't had any of the anthem antics. You haven't had. It just doesn't seem you haven't had the same level of politicization in the NBA and the NFL, and I wonder if you have a perspective on why.
I think there are a few reasons. One is that the NBA sort of preempted this whole thing by having a rule on the books, and this predates even David Stern regarding the national anthem. So, they can say, well, they might not like the rule and they may want the rule changed, but I don't think anybody really paid attention to it or got around to it. I mean, so that's there to, head off a lot of this stuff. I think also it's an environment in which I think a lot of people believe, players, some of those more emotional coaches, believe that everybody does think the way they do. And so I don't think they feel like they have to, convince people or make a demonstration quite the same way. And I think they're a little delusional in that, but I do think that it's like, well, of course we all think this way, and it never really gets probed. And then another reason, and I was talking with Adam Silver for a few minutes over the weekend out in Oakland, and he was talking about how just respect of everybody's views are important, and that's a word he goes to a lot. I also think that these guys do have fairly large platforms in other areas, whether it's shoe endorsements, commercial deals. They have a visibility. Even just the fact that they play out there in essentially old-fashioned underwear, they're visible. You see their faces. You're relatively close. The cameras are on. I don't think they feel as anonymous and therefore driven to, I need to make a statement and have people notice who I am when my helmet's off, because when my helmet's on, I don't really, have much personality out there. And I think these guys are a little bit more known quantities overall.
Yeah, it's a friendlier setting because when you see their eyes and their facial expressions, it's different.
Kevin Durant, he was in a recent episode of Billions. He's trying to get his acting career going, too.
He was?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Well, back to the Philadelphia Eagles. Not one player during the course of the season took a knee. So why is it that only 10 to 15 players wanted to go today to the White House?
Yeah, that's just sort of become this thing now. And, to be perfectly fair, we should note that at some point during when the Miami Heat won a couple championships, Pat Riley, the team president, did not go to the White House while Barack Obama was president. I think Tom Brady missed a White House visit when Obama was president with the Patriots. And again, they were not like team-inspired boycotts. I think it just fits in with where we are, that passing up an opportunity to go there and maybe get a comment or two in edgewise, to the president as he shakes your hand. I mean, to actually engage in, a few syllables of dialogue doesn't interest people as much as taking a visible stand and not dialoguing. Everybody wants that conversation until it's time to have a conversation.
What about just the whole sort of pro forma invitation to the championship team to the White House, and should that, in everybody's mental health interest, just go by the boards?
Yeah, I mean, that right. You back this whole thing up, a little ways, and then you've got that ceremonial stuff, and who's getting more out of it? Is it the president and his administration and this photo op for sports fans that maybe they don't know if they're quite under the the umbrella, or is it the sports teams themselves? And what a thrill to go to the White House and meet the president of the United States, whoever it happens to be. That used to be I think the side on which most of this fell. But it's flipped, and maybe the fact that in a crazed media world, it's not as big a deal to go to the White House or meet the president. You feel like that stuff's already in your living room all the time, and so now you have to have hard political opinions about things rather than just be respectful of the concept and the whole
Well, who started that?
And just be
I don't mean
I'm
to
a
put you
basketball player.
yeah.
I'm a baseball player. Yeah.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but how did that whole thing with bringing sports teams to the White House begin?
That I don't know. I'm not sure if Washington or Jefferson brought early styles. Yeah. The whole thing. Presidents throwing out the baseball on opening day. I think that goes back to about Taft or whatever. But
right.
Beyond that, in terms of these visits, I'm not sure that I heard much about it before Nixon. Nixon was a huge NFL fan, and I think Washington might have won. Not sure. When he was in there, he was known for giving, coaching tips, as they would put it, to George Allen, who coached there for a spell. And so maybe that was a little bit of it. I know, before that, mostly I recall is presidents being photographed, from Kennedy, Eisenhower, a few before that, throwing out the first ball. But for teams actually going to the White House, I don't know. I think that's a little bit more modern. It could be. I mean, who knows? It might have been the Miracle on Ice team, in '80 that started that. I'm not sure.
Sure, Kennedy throwing out the first ball to Joe DiMaggio, who then threw it to Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
They kind of had to do.
And President Trump hasn't thrown out a first pitch yet, correct?
I don't believe he has.
Yeah.
Just going back to the major sports again, NBA versus NFL versus, say, baseball. What about the coverage of it? What about the media side of it? It seems to me, and I don't watch ESPN like I used to, but it seems to me that the pundits that cover football for ESPN and other sports networks, it seems to me maybe they're a little bit more politicized too than some of the reporters and pundits that are more focused on the other sports, or maybe it's just that the NFL is so much more central to their programming than some of the other sports. I'm not sure which it is. Do you have any perspective on that?
I guess, can you give me a for instance regarding what level?
Well, I mean, I just think like
you're talking about.
You hear like Chris Carter tweeted yesterday about the Eagles thing. President Obama should invite the Eagles to his house for a barbecue. Stephen A. Smith has waded into politics. Now he covers the NBA as much as he does more than he does at the NFL. But it just seems to me on some of the countdown shows. And maybe, again, it's maybe just because I'm more inclined to watch that some of the other stuff on ESPN, that there's more politics infused from. I mean, I remember, for example, Kansas City Chiefs when that, what was his name, Belcher, the linebacker who tried to kill he killed his girlfriend and then he killed himself.
Right, outside the
and Adam Schefter went on this rant about gun control, and Bob Costas when he was doing sports.
Yeah.
It just seems to me they're more inclined to wade into the public policy of the political arena than some of the reporters or pundits, analysts in the other sports.
Well, I mean the TNT studio show of with Shaq and Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley and Ernie Johnson. I mean they will take on these things as well. And what you often see is two of the four or three of the four might have the same opinion on something, and then there's usually at least one person that's a counterbalance. I'm not sure if you get the counterbalance on some of the NFL stuff. I don't watch enough of that to really know. I'm more aware. I am aware of Costas and strident positions that he has put out there during sports telecasts. I think part of it goes to, and I've been in this sports side of journalism, my entire career. So I can attest to this, I guess. There's a lot of people on this side of it. There's a little bit of a sheepishness or an inferiority complex that, I'm a journalist, but I don't really cover anything that matters. And therefore, I need to sort of puff up when I get an opportunity to wade into a social topic. And almost more so, I mean, we talk about bias in mainstream media, and to me, it's almost less checked than in the political side or the news side, because you are covering things that don't matter. It long has been known as the toy department of news, and so you're, it's like, well, I have to feel good about myself and be able to look my peers in the eye when I walk through the Washington Post newsroom to get to the sports department. And I think there's that. I think there's, people start out and I want to be Woodward and Bernstein, and eventually you want to be Bob Costas, so you want to be, I don't even know who the sort of national writers are at this stage. It's all gotten so splintered, but, Dick Young or Red Smith, or to really reach back. But, there's that, I think. There's sort of this sense that I don't really matter. I need to. So to me, that's the problem with these coaches that go on these rants, is that they're doing it to a nodding audience of young alleged journalists who don't ever push back. And to me, that's the biggest problem with mainstream media, is when they agree with the people they cover, they don't push back. They don't scrutinize. Only when they disagree, and they shouldn't even be in the business of disagreeing. They should only be, in the matter of, in the business of covering and carrying, alternative views. But when they disagree, as we see a lot with in this Trump era, all they want to do is push back and ignore, anything legit that comes from that side of things.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective. I think that makes a lot of sense. He is Steve Aschburner. He is a senior writer for NBA.com. Get his, you can also follow him on Twitter, ASCHNBA. Get his reviews of the NBA Finals for as long as they continue. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Good talking with you.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro